Welcome to the Put On Waivers Media Group, home of the Put On Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
Yeah, and he's hurt again. He missed practice today, undisclosed. So we'll see how long he's out. I think they did go out and sign Spillane, hopefully, to be a rock that they can play 17 games. Now, he's never started full-time in the NFL. He started last year for a portion of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think physically, what this team needs to do is figure out – there were so many draft picks that were just bad over the last 5 years. They need to know what they have in those guys. So the only way they're going to know is if they give him a chance to play. They have no depth at linebacker. That's why they went out and signed Darius Harris. Luke Masterson's hanging around. You know, you have Bernie, the rookie, who was a seventh rounder. Butler's still hanging around, but not a lot of guys that have played a lot of snaps in the NFL. They just need to figure out what they have in Diablo, and I think they're going to give him that chance. And clearly, this year, I think they're not going to say the word rebuild, but they need to know what they have in some of these young guys moving forward. And I think he's one that they like. The athletic ability. They like the length. They like the size. He was good in run defense. Now, if they can get him to pick up the pass coverage, and I think having him call the defense, now I don't know if that's going to continue when the season starts. Hopefully it does, but getting him to understand the defense in and out, what everyone else's responsibilities might help him understand what he needs to do in pass coverage. So we'll see. You know, last year in zone coverage, he wasn't very good before he got hurt. And I think this year he's going to have a chance to prove that he can stay on the field. And like I said, the Raiders don't have any other options. They don't have anyone else. And unless you believe in Luke Masterson, they don't have anyone else you can run out there right now. And it doesn't look like they're in a hurry to add guys. I think Darius Harris got added. They released Mayuga, the linebacker from USC, to make room for him. Mm-hmm. Is they're looking for depth, guys with a little bit of experience, some younger guys that might be able to help on special teams, which means they really believe in Spillane and Diablo. And they're going to give them every chance to be starters this season.
Yeah, well,
we'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. Anything? A couple of questions about Drake Thomas and Amari Burney. Did you see any of that when you were there as well? Nothing, right? Nothing.
Didn't see a lot around from either one of them.
Nothing. The biggest, the guy who I really, I don't want it to come. Hopefully Brandon Faison is okay, but Jacorian Bennett would be the guy who it'd be kind of cool to see him kind of step forward here and be a solid contributor from a starting or just getting some solid reps in these games. Hopefully in the preseason he can show us something.
Yeah, he looked good in the snaps that he got, the length, the size that he had when he was here prior with the Raiders. And you can see the body types they're looking for on the outside now. These are big, long guys. And when you start talking about David Long and then you have Peters and then you have Faison, Sam Webb is the same way. So they want guys that are 6 foot or taller, 200 pounds with some length. And I think Faison was going to play a lot. Like I said, hopefully this is not a long-term injury. And I think Bennett has a chance to play a lot early. If Faison's hurt and they lose him for the beginning of the year, I think you're looking at Peters and Bennett, I would say. Just the way he could run, the way he ran with receivers, it was tight coverage, making plays on the ball in the air, something the Raiders haven't had as a defensive back. So he was clearly like walking away. And I know when we did a draft recap, I thought maybe he's a year away. I think that he has a chance to contribute a lot early. He's a lot better and a lot more advanced than I had thought at that time. He was the guy when I left. I'm like, this guy's better than I thought he was.
That whole DJ Hayden, would just he'd run stride for stride with a receiver, but when the ball got in the air, he just
didn't know where it was.
Just started grabbing everything, and then looked like this.
Route.
I'm like, Stanford route. Hey, pass interference. What are you talking about? I'm like, dude, you just tackled the guy, the ball in the air.
I will say David Long too was pretty good. And then when they went to 11 on 11, the last play of practice, he was running a crossing route with Trey Tucker. I think it was Tucker, and clotheslined him, like knocked the ball away and just laid him out basically with no pads. Like it was pretty physical. He was around the ball. He was making plays. So it was good to see that as well.
And you didn't see he's on NFI, so you didn't see Wilson at all. around, right? He's not going to be anywhere near
Didn't see him at all.
Yeah. So I just wanted to see that was a question. So it sounds like Jesper Hofstad is going to be the third tight end, right? Because you got Hooper.
Yeah.
Who's kind of a pass catcher, but he can do some things in the blocking game. And then Michael Mayer will be he'll probably be a number one tight end when it's all said and done. It'd be interesting to see if they baby him during the preseason, because you want to make sure he's ready for game one. The running game, Amir Abdullah. We had why can't I say her name? Josina Anderson. Talked about Josh Jacobs today, and that he's open to a deal. And you made a good point at tweeting that out immediately, that it can't be more than a 1 year deal, correct? It has to be only a 1 year deal. He can't sign a long-term deal till next season.
Cannot. I even went to someone asked me if they could rescind the tag and give him a multi-year deal. They can't do that either. If they rescind the tag, he immediately becomes a free agent, and he can still only play on a 1 year deal with the Raiders. I went through the NFL website, reading all the stuff I could on the franchise tag today.
Yeah.
If you get franchise tag and you go past the deadline, which was July 15th or 17th, whatever, you can only play for that team on a 1 year deal, no matter what, for the season. So even if they rescind the tag, and if they rescind the tag, he's going to go sign with someone else on a multi-year deal. There's no reason for him to stay. But the kicker here, and I don't think a lot of people understand this, is if they go the Saquon route, so he's at $10.1 million. Let's just say they could give him a 1 year, $12 million deal. Well, if they want to franchise tag him next year, if they can't work it out and they're in the same spot next year, it's 120% of his salary. So not only are you, by giving him more money this year, you're raising the franchise tag next year if you want to use it. So it'd be 120% of 12 million, where right now you could get him next year for 12 million. So that's why I've always said, a lot of people are tweeting back at me, well, he turned down $12 million a year. Why would he play on a 1 year deal for less than that? Well, he doesn't have any leverage. We already know he's not going to sit out. Josh Jacobs is not walking away from $10 million as a running back when you have a limited shelf life in the NFL. He has a limited time in his life to make real money. He's not going to walk away from a $700,000 or $800,000 a week paycheck to prove a point, because he's a running back. He's not going to get it. He's not a quarterback. If you miss a couple of paychecks and you sign a $250 million deal, it doesn't matter. He's a running back, so he has to make money in the next. He's 25. He's got basically a 3 or 4 year window before he gets to 29, 30. He's got to make money right now, so he's not going to say no. If you give him a $12 million deal and you want to franchise tag him next year, that's going to raise him up in close to so it's 12, and then you would take maybe 14 and a half. It sounds good. Give him extra money to get him camp now, but you're also raising the ticket for next year, unless the Raiders just let him walk, or you can't trade him next year. So that's the thing. They can't. If they franchise tag him again, we're in the same spot, unless they want to franchise tag him and trade him for a couple of draft picks after that and play this game again. So hopefully he comes in and they figure it out and he signs in January once the season's over, or February, fingers crossed. I don't see a Super Bowl run coming, but if there is, hopefully they sign him before free agency. But at this point, to me, as long as he's there after the second preseason game and he has a couple of weeks to get into shape, I'm fine. I don't need him in camp today. I don't need him next week. August 20th, let's get him in after that Rams game, whenever that Rams game is, and give him, that's almost comes in on the 20th. That gives him 24 days to get ready. When's the opener? 13th or 14th, 22, 23 days.
Second
3 weeks. That's enough.
That should be
and you're not gonna give him the ball 25 times week one anyways. You're gonna split carries with Zamir White and work him in slowly. Zamir White looked good too. So
which is good. Which is good. Zamir White making plays. And did Zamir White catch anything out of the backfield? How was his hands out of the backfield?
Well, they had a real problem completing screens, so I can't remember which ones he was involved in. It wasn't the fault of the running backs.
Listen, you gotta, if you want to get Josh McDaniels mad, don't mess up his screen passes. He loves those screen passes. Don't mess those things up.
It is interesting today. There was reports that they worked out Rex Burkhead and Damian Williams. So they already have plenty of running backs in camp. So maybe Austin Walter, maybe Britton Brown, maybe Brandon Bolden. One of these guys is in trouble, but I don't know why they would bring in a running back at this point. They have 5 or 6 of them on their roster.
Yeah, interesting. There. So we do talk special teams on this team. So returning punts, kickoffs are just like you're just there for the one time they might try to do is to do a little bit of a squib kick or do something creative. And then the Raiders tried to do last year, and then the NFL will nix that as well. Do you think they put it was? I know that Tucker could return kickoffs in college. Was he a punt returner as well at Cincinnati? So no. So who are we looking at? Is it Renfro? Like, who are we looking at to return punts here on this roster? As I'm looking through it right now to do that for the Raiders.
It's going to be Renfro would be my guess, just because I don't see him having a huge role in this offense. Like, they're not going to ask him to carry this offense. He's not the number one option. He's probably not the number two option. So, and they're going to have plenty of options at slot with Carter and Tucker. So if he gets hurt returning punts, it's not the end of the world for this offense. Now, I don't want him to get hurt returning punts, but my guess is it's going to be Renfro and probably Carter would be the second guy, and then Abdullah can always do it as well. So I think it's you're looking at those three guys. I don't know if Tucker. The other guys are veterans and they've been around the league. I don't really like rookie punt returners. It's just a personal thing I have because they tend to fumble and make bad decisions a lot. I would rely on the veterans to make those decisions.
Yeah, I would be definitely. I just want to know. I know they really want to get. I know they really want to get him involved. So I can tell that I can just like it. Just he was that surprise pick. He's really fast. He's him and Dorsett are two of the fastest people on the team. So it kind of makes sense. So we'll see what happens as far as that goes. You mentioned Big Nickel. You talked about who came down? Teamer came down on the Big Nickel. Teamer. Do you foresee that being something that is an interchangeable piece as far as Epps or Morey coming down? And I know Jaquan Johnson is hurt as well too, so I'm not sure how long he's going to be out.
I don't. I think it's going to be pull him out or Teamer. I don't trust Teamer or pull him out deep as a safety and coverage. I'd much rather have them up in the box. And I think Teamer is going to make this team. He was running a lot of gunner on some of the drills. He's reliable for what he is. Like, he's not a superstar, but like, he could do much worse as a third or fourth safety, probably fourth safety.
Yep.
So I think pull him out might get some dime linebacker snaps, and there might be certain weeks where you can use him in man coverage to cover tight ends. So there is a role for him in the defense. So I think they're going to carry. I actually think they're going to carry 5 safeties. So I think Smith's going to make the team as well. So it'll be interesting. Maybe a team makes an offer for one of those guys. Maybe someone wants Teamer and you move him at the final cut down. But I do think he's going to make this team. I would add on Tucker. I would like to see some creativity of lining him up in the backfield on passing downs, as far as like trying to find ways to just get the ball in his hands, because you're not going to have a ton of opportunities to run him out of a slot and just call plays for him in the slot and get him the ball, because you have Renfro and Myers on this team.
Yeah.
So line him up in the backfield, motion him out, do some stuff with him to get him involved in the game, where it's not just jet sweeps or, hey, if we put him in the slot and we throw him the ball the one time he's in the slot, the defense knows what's going on.
Yeah.
But they should move this guy around. And the joker that Lynn Bowden was supposed to be for John Gruden, like, kind of use him that way and get him involved. Now, obviously, he's going to have to pick that up. You don't want him in pass protection. He's little. He's 5'9", 175 pounds.
Yeah.
But, if there's ways where you can get him to run angle routes, run him out in the flat, just get him the ball in space like a kick returner and just let him operate, and not just do like, wide receiver screens or jet sweeps like, they have done. That'll be interesting to see how they incorporate him. I still think at the end of the day, this team's going to be a run first. They're going to pound the ball. You're going to see a lot of what I saw as well, which is not surprising, is they would go in personnel, basically, when they went to 21 personnel with 2 backs and 1 tight end, so they had 2 wide receivers on the field. A lot of times the wide receivers went to the same side of the field. So you had Adams outside, Myers inside in the slot, and then the 2 tight ends on the other side of the line of scrimmage. So you're going to see a lot of bigger formations. I think you're going to see a lot more 2 tight ends. They're going to want to run the football, and that's another way to get Myers in the slot when you only have 2 wide receivers in the field.
Are you worried about like what potentially could be the, short pass city offense?
Um,
I mean, if they can run it,
not,
if they can run it, it's not, they'll be able to move it even with a short intermediate passing game.
no, as long as they don't, it's down in distance, so they can't get
Yes,
penalties. They can't get holdings, false starts.
Can't get
if
behind.
this offense gets into 3rd and 8+, 3rd and 12, like probably not going to convert a lot of those. And I don't think Garoppolo is the kind of guy that's going to try to force the ball down the field and try to convert those. He's going to take the safe throw, punt, because that's what he's done. Don't turn the ball over, be a game manager. So there's a lot of pressure on this offensive line not to get a ton of penalties and really put this offense in a hole. And I did read, I don't know if you read the article today by Tayshaun Reed. Apparently there was a lot of pre-snap penalties from Jermaine Illuminor today, to the point where they pulled him off the field and put Munford in with the first team. So that's something to keep an eye on, because the penalties were an issue last year with Illuminor.
Yeah, that's interesting, but I think it could have been, was that just a 1-day thing, or that was something?
It was just it was something happened today.
Oh, okay. Well, Tashawn and McDaniels are kind of close, man. He calls him out all the time, and when the Raiders had that video, he was in the video dressed up, looking fresh. So you never know. You never know as far as that goes. If you have any Raider thoughts before I had one topic, NFL thought that I want to kind of go off real quick on.
I will say that every year I bet the Raiders over. Like every year I'm going to bet the over. This year I went to Vegas for the practice, and I'm like, I'm going to bet the under. If they're not good, I'm going to make some money. If they're good and they beat it, I don't care if I wasted the money on it. I'm going to win either way. And then I walked in and saw what the number was, and I bet the over anyways, because it was 6.5. I'm like, this team has to find a way to win 7 games.
Like, one more game than that.
Just 7 and 10. That's all I need to cash out. So I had every intention of betting the under. That number is just too low for me. I think that this team still has Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs. They still have Max Crosby. Yeah. They still have one of the top 3 kickers in the game. They have one of the top 2 or 3 punters in the game. This team is not as bad as the media is putting out there. I don't think this is a great team by any stretch of the imagination, but they're better than a 6.5 point team.
I agree with you. I just worry about the quarterback situation. It couldn't be if he goes down, it could be when he goes down. So if he does go down, then that could be an issue as well. Jonathan Taylor, the whole thing going on with the owner, we had that, and then also you're talking about something where we were talking about, people were saying that maybe the Chiefs were involved in some kind of trade with him going from the Colts to Kansas City. What are your thoughts about like how this whole thing is being handled, and all of a sudden like the mysterious back injury? If he really doesn't have a back injury, that's kind of shady. But what were your thoughts about that part, the whole situation with the Colts?
Thank you, Colts, because now we're not talking. The national media is not talking about the Raiders and Josh Jacobs. So now they've turned the page. Now they're talking about Jonathan Taylor and Jim Irsay. Taylor has no leverage here. They're not going to trade him. It's fun to think about, but at the end of the day, Irsay's already came out and said, nope, we're not trading him. So if you believe him, and I do, I think Jim Irsay at this point in his life is basically going to put his foot down. You saw the quotes he made, like, if I die, if you're not in the league, no one's going to care. The league goes on. So that's paraphrasing basically what he said. The league doesn't care about individual players or individual owners. It's a machine. It keeps rolling. So I don't think he's going to acquiesce Jonathan Taylor here and trade him, unless someone wants to offer like a 1st-round pick, which I don't think anyone will.
No.
Jonathan Taylor is property of the Indianapolis Colts. He will be playing for them this year at some point. And this will move on, and it'll become an issue again in the offseason. Now, Taylor can ask for a trade. That doesn't mean they're going to do it, and I don't think they will. Now, the back injury is interesting because it sounds like there was numerous reports that he complained of it during his physical and when he arrived to camp, and Jonathan Taylor came out and said that's not true. So there's obviously somebody's lying here.
Yes. 100%.
The Colts probably leaked to the media, hey, there was a back injury, and I don't think they would leak that without knowing that was actually real. So I'm going to kind of lean here that the Colts are telling the truth on this one, even though Jonathan Taylor tried to deny it, because there's some HIPAA laws involved here where you can't just come out and disclose injuries that aren't real on players.
Yeah.
If I'm Jonathan Taylor and I know that's wrong, then I'll do something about it legally because you can, which he hasn't done. So I just think it's just a blow up. He wants his money. He realizes it's not coming, and NFL teams are not going to pay running backs, and the running backs have to understand that it's a crappy way to do business. It's a crappy thing that's going on, but that's just how it is. Like teams are not investing in these guys, and they fall off quickly when they get into their upper 20s after they've had a lot of carries. So, I don't know what needs to change. Something needs to be. They're vital pieces to teams, but right now, just the way everything's set up, there's nothing the running backs can really do other than hope to make. Hopefully you get a second contract or you get a couple franchise tags, try to make $25-30 million, and hopefully you don't sustain some career-ending injury or something that's going to debilitate you later on in life, and just hopefully win a championship in the meantime. But it's too easy to find running backs nowadays.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's hard because like you can't have a huge stance on being a running back in the league when the minor league system, college football, is just going to keep pouring those guys into the league, and they're going to be, and they want their opportunity to play. They want their opportunity to feed their families who have made all those sacrifices for them to play football. So it's not a way to, we're not really a way of kind of, it's not a problem that they can fix, and it's just not going to happen. I mean, look at all the trash that Saquon Barkley talked, and then boom, they just gave him a bunch of incentives that he's never reached in his career, and they said, "Hey, go ahead if you reach these." And the teams kind of, they really want to get shady. I mean, the teams control the incentives as well. Like if you're getting close to some of these incentives, they could put the backup running back in if they really wanted to play that game too. So it's just a tough situation. They're getting paid good money. Just still do what you got to do to take care of it. We don't want to see see you on that 30 for 30. Players losing money and stuff like that. So that's pretty much what it is. I mean, there's nothing you can really do about the running back situation. It's just not in demand situation like pass rusher, like left tackle, like like quarterback. It's just not one of those situations.
I think too, like it's almost a team by team issue here too. So where's your team in the growth development towards a playoff team? Are you a contender? Are you a Super Bowl team? Super Bowl teams don't pay running backs. But a lot of those teams have quarterbacks and wide receivers and star defensive players that they have to pay. The Raiders situation is a little different. They don't have a long-term quarterback. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is here for more than 2, maybe 3 years at tops. They're probably going to move on from. They're probably going to move on from Hunter Renfrow after this year, unless he just balls out. And it's easy to say, would you rather have Josh Jacobs at 12 million or Hunter Renfrow at 15 or 16? I would rather have Jacobs, but if the Raiders believe in that, or if they want to go get a rookie quarterback next year, then you can pay Jacobs because you're going to want him around with the rookie quarterback. But they also invested valuable draft capital in Zamir White, and they have to know what they have there. The Colts have Anthony Richardson. He's a rookie, but they have a lot of other guys they're going to have to pay. And it's much easier to pay a corner, a defensive tackle that's disruptive, a defensive end, a left tackle, and just go find a running back that can get you, 1,000 yards doesn't mean anything more. You play 17 games. Like if you play 17 games and you get the ball, you should get 1,000 yards as long as your offensive line's not terrible and you're a good running back. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes moving forward. I think the franchise tag, and what happened is basically the cost of the quarterbacks has grown so exponentially.
Yeah.
That's where all the money is going. And if you have quarterbacks, you have to protect them with left tackles, and you have to have guys to throw the ball to and weapons.
Yep.
And then you don't pay the running back. That's just kind of how it happened over the last, in the 90s, it was all about who's your running back and Danian Tomlinson and Priest Holmes and who can I give the ball to 250, 300 times, who's going to score 20 touchdowns. That doesn't happen anymore.
It's over. As far as that goes, it is what it is. I mean, just like I said, they're still important pieces of teams, but they're not going to. It's not like back in the day where we're just handing the ball to Emmitt Smith 25 billion times. And those days are definitely 100% over as far as that goes. All right, Ryan. Anything else you want to add to the stew before we serve it out to the people?
No, that's pretty much a quick rundown of camp. There's not a lot going on. Now the pads are on. Now it's real. So everyone's in the best shape of their life. Everyone's having the best training camp of their life. That was in shorts and helmets. and shelved.
Yes.
Now it's real. So let's see who the defensive
When
linemen are. Let's see who can pass protect. Let's see
yeah.
which guys can tackle. It was interesting. The Raiders were tackling to the ground today, and it sounds like they didn't do that at all last year. And day one with pads, they're hitting, they're taking guys down. Hopefully, they don't sustain any injuries because you know me, the only thing I care about in the preseason is no one get hurt. Everyone needs to be
Yes.
ready when the gates open week one. We don't need any season-long injuries to star players or guys that are going to be counting on to play big roles because this team doesn't have a lot of depth at certain positions. We talk about the cornerback room. We talk about the wide receivers. They don't have a lot of depth on the offensive line. They don't have a lot of depth at defensive tackle, and they have no depth at linebacker. So this team can't sustain an injury to a defensive tackle or a linebacker in the preseason.
No depth, no depth, no depth.
Or even
that
imagine
sounds
if something
like
happened to Dylan Parham or God forbid,
yes.
Colton Miller. Like
Yeah.
I will add, I did tweet out
How do
about
you handle
Colton
that
Miller.
though? Like I mean, good point. Good point. Definitely 100%. And Thursday night will be Jets Browns, so we get some football to watch. Even though it won't be anybody you recognize. You probably see him somewhere else later on.
Oh, DTR is playing the second half. You didn't see that info today?
DTR. Oh my God, you don't DTR. Yeah, hey, listen, little engine who could. Listen, I like if you have a quarterback like I guess Josh McDaniels is the same way because if you have a quarterback who can't move and Jimmy G, you have backups who can't move. They have they got a couple quarterbacks there who can move. So you got a backup who can move with DTR. But yeah, I mean listen, when's the Raiders' first preseason game?
It's a great question.
When is the first preseason game? I can't.
I want to say it's like
it still says time to be announced when I went to the Redwood. The time to be.
They're playing the 49ers, so I want to
Yeah.
say.
But on Raiders.com,
yeah,
we'll see. Well, I guess we'll see what happens when that happens. But I mean, I'm gonna be interested. I'm interested to see how their quarterbacks play, especially Aiden O'Connell, because you did because they could have went linebacker, they could have went other positions before they got him, and I don't think they were definitely higher on him than anybody else I read about. So that's interesting in that sense. But I do want to see what Tucker can do. See what all these guys can do. I definitely want to see what Zamir White can do as well. Jacorian Bennett, those guys like that.
Here's another mark the tape moment, and hopefully I'm wrong here. I tweeted about Colton Miller's contract. Colton Miller, $17.4 million. I could be wrong by a couple $100,000 here, but I'm going to say 17.4. He's the second highest cap hit on this team. He has a $14.2 million guaranteed salary that the Raiders could say, the money's already in the cash budget. It's guaranteed. He's getting paid this year. If the Raiders just said, Colton, here's a check for $14 million right now, they could open up, I think it's a little over $9 million in cap room in one transaction. They chose not to do that. They chose to restructure Jacoby Myers' deal, who they just signed in the offseason, added 2 voidable years. So when Jacoby Myers is not on this team, they're still going to be paying him for 2 years after that. The same thing they did with Carl Nassib, the same thing they did with Corey Littleton, and that was Ziegler. That did it with those contracts. So the Raiders are kicking money. They're kicking money down the road on players they don't need to. And they're not touching Colton Miller's contract, which tells me, if you read between the lines, who was the guy they wanted to draft at number 7 this year that they didn't get? They wanted Paris Johnson.
Yeah, Ohio State.
They wanted the tackle. So something's telling me, and hopefully I'm wrong, that we talk about Renfro not being on this team next year and a couple other guys would not shock me because of what's going on right now, that if Colton Miller might not be on this team next year, they may look to move on in the offseason. They may look to trade him. It's a big cap number. And they clearly right now are choosing not to spread out that guaranteed money into a bonus. I don't know why they're not doing it. And the only thing I can think of is, wait a minute, they wanted to take the tackle. They weren't going to play him at right tackle for 5 years. He was going to go over to left tackle at some point. So I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm not saying it's not going to happen. That Colton Miller might be on the trade block after this season.
So I'm happy to put that at the end of the show, so I can actually just easily edit it and put it out there immediately before I edit the whole show. But that is, man, that is something that grosses me out. That bothers the hell out of me.
Hopefully it doesn't happen.
Hopefully it doesn't happen, but like
why would you add 2 avoidable years to Jacoby Myers and you don't have to? You can make one transaction that doesn't cost you any money.
Yeah,
because he's already getting paid. It's guaranteed. Now, granted, you're going to kick some of that bonus into next year and the year after, but then his cap number goes from like, I think it's like 13 or 14 million dollars. Then it goes up to 17 or 18, which is still perfectly fine to pay a top 10 left tackle in the league. And it's still a value. That contract he signed, if you look at the contracts the Technos are signing now, that was a steal.
Still.
I think it was 3 years, $54 million, something like that. So maybe they need room later on. Maybe this is a transaction that happens once roster cut down. They're going to need money to pay guys that go on IR. They're going to need money to add to this roster. They're going to need money at some point this season because they're pretty tight up against it. I think they have less than it's like $4.5 million in cap room. Why have they not done that? They could have done it at any point this offseason and opened up $9 million. It wouldn't cost them. And a lot of people are throwing out, well, it's cash. They have cash budgets. The money's guaranteed. It's already accounted for. In the accounting department, already knows Colton Miller is getting $17 million a year. $14 million of it is guaranteed. So just convert it into a signing bonus like every other team in the National Football League and open up a free $9 million. If you don't use it, you can roll it into next year. It's a very simple transaction.
Listen, we don't always tell you what you want to hear on this show, so maybe that's something. But I didn't think about that. But it's interesting. But I thought it was odd that they did do that with Myers' contract. So, all right, Rare Nation. Maybe squeeze tight to those Colton Miller jerseys. Who knows? All right, Rich. Hopefully, they actually. But you're right. I mean, Paris Johnson was there, and that's the guy they really wanted over anybody. So this team would have really drafted Paris Johnson and Michael Mayer, and not touch the defense at all. And I'm trying to be positive, Rare Nation. I'm trying to be positive. I'll be positive. All right, Ryan. You have a great night.
You too. Take care.
Enjoy, brother.
Sorry to throw that in late.
That's all right.